I didn't come to Hollow Ridge looking for anything, certainly not peace. Maybe just the kind of silence that sinks into your bones when everything else has failed. That's what I told myself, anyway. By the time I pulled off onto the gravel shoulder, the sun was already bleeding out behind the trees. There was a gate, barely, just a twisted frame of rusted metal clinging to one hinge, with a wooden sign nailed crooked to a post. The letters were almost gone, eroded into shallow ghosts in the grain. You could squint and maybe make out a few. I didn't try too hard. I sat there with the engine ticking down, staring at the path ahead. I could have turned back, driven the hour into Barrows Hollow, slept in my mom's spare room, let her pretend I wasn't falling apart. But instead I killed the engine, locked the truck, and stepped into the brush. The trail, if you could call it that, was barely more than a crease in the undergrowth. A thread of dirt, choked with briars and windfall. It felt untouched. I liked that at first. Liked that I could walk for hours and never hear another voice, never see another boot print. The land pitched in strange ways, all run-off gullies and sudden dips. I slipped once on a wet slope, caught myself on a root that felt half-rotted. When I looked up, I could see the ridge cut against the sky like broken glass through the branches. And for a second, I felt it. That old, cold thought, how easy it'd be to disappear out here. Just step wrong. Fall. Gone. Not a soul would know where you'd ended up. A mile in, maybe more, I found what looked like the edge of an old fence line. Boards splintered and caved in, half swallowed by moss and earth. Beyond it, a clearing, no wider than a small room, circled in stone. The stones were old, too old to place, and sunken deep in the ground. In the center of it all, a young tree stood crooked in a shallow hollow. Its trunk split near the base like it had once been two and decided to become one. The sight of it made my mouth dry. I stepped around the edge of the clearing without getting closer. Something about the shape of that tree made me think of limbs. I kept moving. The trail curved toward the river, a low, silver thread between dark roots. I found a bluff above it with just enough dry ground for my tent. The silt under my boots held print. My own and another. Faint impressions. Narrow, uneven. Some of them spaced like someone had been leaping or limping. I told myself they were old. Weather-worn. From kids maybe, months back. I forced myself to keep going. Built a fire. Sat with the paperback I couldn't concentrate on. I read the same line again and couldn't tell you a word of it. Then came the whistle. 2 notes. Low. Deliberate. Carried on the slope like it belonged there. I stopped breathing. It came again. Same 2 notes. Same pause after, like someone waiting for a reply. I called out. Hello. My voice didn't sound like mine. Nothing answered. I waited until the fire was coals. The whistle didn't come again. But the quiet that followed? It was worse. Like the whole forest was holding its breath. Eventually, I crawled into my tent. I didn't zip it all the way. Laid down with my knife across my chest, the hilt pressed flat against my ribs. And I waited for morning. I don't know when I fell asleep, but I woke with a jolt, like surfacing from deep water. My chest tight, breath caught somewhere between panic and instinct. It was dark. Darker than inside a shut box. The kind of dark that listens back. Then I heard it. Leaves. Just a few. Crunching. 1 step at a time. Careful. Measured. Close. 10 feet away. Maybe less. I held still, every muscle pulled tight. Whoever, whatever it was, they were circling the bluff, staying just out of sight. The sound stopped. I could hear my pulse in my ears. Then contact. Something pressed gently against the nylon wall of the tent. 1 finger, maybe, tracing the curve of my leg through the fabric. Slow. Curious. I bit down on my tongue, hard enough to taste metal. It moved again, following the length of my thigh, back down. The pressure of it was unmistakable. This wasn't a branch or a breeze. This was someone. I shut my eyes, held my breath, lay there like a corpse trying to pass as empty. The pressure lifted. The steps resumed. Fading this time, uphill, deliberate. I waited until the faintest pale light bled over the ridge. When I opened the tent, The air stung like ice. No footprints. No bent twigs. Just my gear, just the cold. I packed in 10 minutes, shaking so hard I couldn't roll the tarp right. I didn't care. I needed to move. Didn't stop to eat. Barely drank. The woods felt different on the way out. Wrong in a way I couldn't explain. Every step like walking through static. I didn't look back. When I reached the truck, I nearly collapsed. But something stopped me. There, leaning against the driver's side door, was a strip of birch bark, curled and pale like a fossil. A figure had been carved into it. Long legs. No arms. Oval head. Just a blank shape. Not a threat. Not a message. A marking. I drove until my hands stopped shaking. Until the road gave way to gravel, then mud. Back to my uncle's place outside Nolan's Hollow. An old 2-story gray with a stacked stone foundation so crooked you could lose a cat between the cracks. Nobody stayed there long. People in town whispered about it. Just stories. Cold drafts. Mice in the walls. That kind of thing. But it was quiet. And after the trip into the woods, I needed quiet more than anything. I lasted 3 weeks. Chopped wood. Fixed weather stripping. Sat on the porch watching fog gather in the trees. At night, the house breathed. Wood popped in ways that felt like footsteps. The generator hummed wrong sometimes, like it was being watched. But I didn't care. I told myself it was just the house settling. Then came the scratching. Not on the windows. Not at the door. On the porch. Long, slow. Like claws. Or nails dragged across the boards. I thought maybe raccoons until it came again. Louder. Closer. I waited, heart in my throat, revolver on the nightstand. Then it stopped. I checked the porch in the morning. Nothing. But the next night, it came again. And the next. Until one night, I heard the whistle. 2 notes. Same as before. Then the door creaked once. Not open. Just the sound of strain, of something leaning. The next morning I found dirt. Just a smear across the threshold. No footprints. Just one long drag, like something slid against the frame and paused there. That night, I didn't sleep. And just before dawn, when I finally dared to open the door and step outside, there was another piece of birch bark left on the railing. The same figure, same shape, but this time it had eyes. 2 black dots burned into the oval head, and beneath it, a shallow groove, barely visible, a smile. I wasn't trying to find anything out there. No epiphany, no resolution. I just wanted to be left alone long enough to forget myself. The place was called Creighton's Hollow on the old maps, though nobody had used the name in years. A patch of wilderness tangled deep in the back country where the trees hadn't been cleared since the old logging roads washed out. People said the trail still existed, but I didn't see much of a trail when I got there, just a crease in the underbrush, overgrown and dark with shade. By the time I pulled off the highway, the sun was already burning low behind the ridge. The gravel shoulder crunched under my tires. A rusted gate leaned sideways, dangling on one hinge, and beside it stood a rotting wooden sign with barely legible letters, Creighton's Hollow Nature Reserve. The name looked carved by hand, almost ashamed of itself. For a second, I thought about turning back. I could have gone back to town, slept in the spare room at my sister's place, tried to pretend things were normal. But something about the silence felt medicinal, like the only thing I had left that might still fix me. So I killed the engine, locked the truck, and shouldered my pack. The path, if you could call it that, was mostly erosion and animal prints. Brambles snagged my sleeves. Every few yards I had to duck under fallen limbs or climb over stone humps slick with moss. The air had that heavy, still quality like it hadn't been disturbed in a long time. Like it noticed me. I followed the trail for maybe an hour, longer than I meant to. The way twisted in on itself, dipping into gullies and climbing back up steep ridges where runoff had torn trenches through the dirt. At one point, I slipped and caught myself on a root that felt damp and soft, almost like flesh. When I looked up, I could see the ridge between the branches. And I thought, real quiet, It would be so easy to vanish out here. Just one wrong step. Nobody would ever know which way I went. About a mile in, I came across what must have been an old fence. The boards were gray and broken, half buried in the dirt like the earth was swallowing them. Beyond that, a clearing the size of a kitchen, circular, stone-lined, with a shallow pit at its center. A tree was growing from it. A thin, crooked sapling, bark pale and stretched tight. The sight of it made my mouth go dry. Something in my gut recoiled. I walked the edge of the clearing without stepping in. By the time I reached the riverbank, the light was almost gone. The stream was barely a trickle, more mud than water. I found a spot under a bluff where the ground was dry and flat enough to pitch a tent. My boots left dark prints in the silt. That's when I saw them. Footprints. Faint, pressed deep into the dirt behind me. Too small for an adult. The spacing was wrong, too. Some were wide apart, like whoever made them had been leaping or skipping or walking in a way I couldn't quite imagine. I tried to explain them away. Maybe they were old. Maybe they'd been left when the ground was still wet from spring rain. I told myself that and kept moving. I set up camp, built a fire, pulled out the battered paperback I'd brought and tried to read. I read the same page 3 times. Nothing stuck. My eyes kept sliding back to the dark line of trees at the edge of camp. That's when I heard it. A whistle. 2 notes. Low. Measured. Like someone calling from far up the trail. I froze. Waited. A few seconds later, it came again. Same notes, same rhythm. Almost like someone whistling a pattern and waiting to hear if anyone would answer. My mouth went dry. I called out, "Hello?" No answer. Just quiet. The fire burned down. I let it shrink to coals and crawled into the tent. I left the zipper half open and lay on my back with a knife resting flat against my chest, blade sheathed, handle warm in my hand. I must have fallen asleep, eventually. I don't remember when, but I remember waking. My heart was pounding like I'd just been yanked from a nightmare. Only I wasn't dreaming. I was listening. Crunch. A footstep. Then another. Slow. Careful. Someone or something moving just outside the tent. The steps circled the edge of the bluff, then stopped right next to me. No more than 10 feet away. The air felt thick, heavy, like it was pushing down on my chest. Then something pressed against the nylon wall. A single finger, tracing the curve of the fabric. It followed the shape of my knee, dragging slowly down the length of my shin. I didn't breathe, didn't move. My teeth were clenched so tight my jaw felt like it might crack. The pressure disappeared. I heard the steps retreating, soft, deliberate, until they faded into the trees. I waited for the light. Hours, maybe. When gray dawn finally slipped over the ridge, I unzipped the tent with shaking hands. There were no footprints, no broken branches, no sign that anyone had been there at all. But I didn't care. I tore the camp down in minutes, threw everything into my pack, half-folded tarp, spilled cord, stove still warm. I just needed to move. I didn't stop for water or food. I didn't look back. I walked with my head down, the shoulder strap cutting deeper with every mile. My boots blistered me raw, and when I finally reached the clearing and saw my truck wading through the trees, I almost fell to my knees. But then I stopped. Something was leaning against the driver's door. A strip of bark, pale, curled at the edges like it had been peeled fresh. Something was carved into it. A long figure, thin legs, oval head, no arms, just a silhouette. I didn't touch it. I unlocked the door with shaking fingers and drove. I didn't even check the rear view. And I never went back. You tell yourself it's over. That what happened out there was just the woods playing tricks, nerves wound too tight, a bad night stretched into a story you'll laugh off someday. But the truth is, something followed me back. Not literally, at least, not at first. But the quiet came with me. The kind that settles in your bones and makes the floorboards seem too loud, your own breath too sharp. It changed the way I moved, the way I looked at shadows. I went back to Elkford and stayed with my sister for a while. Her place sat above a hardware store, smelled like dryer sheets and onions. She never asked why I left the hollow early. She just handed me a beer and said I looked like hell. I couldn't sleep. Even with the city noise, I'd lie awake for hours, waiting for that whistle to drift through the window. Sometimes I thought I heard it, soft, just on the edge of hearing, but when I sat up, there'd be nothing but the hum of her old fridge. I told myself I needed closure. That's what people call it when they can't leave things alone. A week later, I drove back out to the trailhead. Not to camp, just to look. But when I got there, the gate was gone. No sign it had ever been there. No posts, no hinge, not even the old sign. Just dirt and underbrush like the path had never existed. The whole edge of the woods looked different, grown in, thicker somehow. Like the forest had crept forward a few feet when nobody was looking. I stood there for a long time, staring at where the trail used to be. My truck engine ticked behind me. The woods didn't make a sound. Not wind, not birds. Just that stillness again, thick as wet cotton. I didn't go in. Couldn't. When I got home, I found the first one. It was sitting on the porch rail, another strip of bark. Curled and pale, like before. Same shape carved into it. Long legs. Oval head. No arms. The lines were deeper this time. More deliberate. I didn't bring it inside. I didn't touch it. I left it there, but the next morning it was gone. That's when the calls started. They weren't normal calls. No number on the screen, just the word unknown. Every time I picked up, there'd be nothing at first, just the faint sound of wind or water. Then the whistle. 2 notes. Low. Drawn out. I changed my number. Got a new phone. But it kept happening. I moved again. Packed up everything. Drove 6 hours west to a town where no one knew my name. Found a rental cabin in the hills with no neighbors. No mail service. No porch for anything to be left on. And for a while, it worked. Until the 3rd night. I was out chopping kindling when I noticed it, wedged under the cabin door. A thin curl of bark, fresh and white. This time the figure had legs and a head and a mouth. A wide oval, open like it was screaming. That night, the wind changed. I kept hearing things. Creaking from the loft, scratches under the floorboards. I sat with my back to the wall and the revolver on the table, breathing through my teeth like that could make me smaller. Around midnight, something brushed the window. I didn't look. I couldn't. I just shut my eyes and waited for it to stop. It didn't. The next morning, I found something carved into the siding beside the back door. Not with a knife or ripped, like by a nail or claw. Same shape. Same faceless figure. I left that afternoon. It didn't help. No matter where I go now, it finds me. Not every day. Sometimes weeks will pass and I'll start to think maybe it's over. Then I'll wake up and find bark on the windshield, or footprints in the frost outside my window. Or I'll hear the whistle again, 2 notes, soft and patient, waiting for me to answer. And I never do. I don't go near the woods anymore. Don't hike. Don't camp. Don't even walk by parks. I keep the curtains shut. I sleep with the lights on. But sometimes I wake up anyway, heart hammering, knowing something was just outside. The worst part isn't that it follows me. It's that it remembers. And now, so do I. People say memory fades, that the mind softens the worst parts. But this stayed sharp. The bark figure, the whistle. I carried them with me. I tried to move on motel rooms, truck stops, anywhere but the woods. But it wasn't the forest that followed me. It was whatever that thing marked me with. No one believed me. One friend called it trauma. Another said sleep paralysis. Eventually, I stopped talking about it. But then came the night I parked at a rundown truck stop to sleep. I opened my eyes and saw it, another strip of bark, wedged under the wiper. Only this time, it had arms. Raised. Pointing. I stared until the radio blasted on static, full volume. I killed the engine, got out shaking, and left that bark on the pavement. 2 days later, I got a letter. No return address. Inside was a black and white photo of a clearing, the same one I'd seen out there. Same sapling. On the back, scribbled in pencil. We tried burning it. It came back. After that, I searched everything: town records, old news scans. In one article from '74, a hiker went missing near Nolan's Hollow. He left carved warnings behind. Then another case in '91, camper found alive but unresponsive, repeating one thing. It found me again. It doesn't kill you, not right away. It follows, waits, marks, and once it does, it never really leaves. I'm telling this now so someone else knows. So the next person hears the whistle and understands what it means. Because it's close again. I feel it in the silence. And next time, I don't think it'll stop at the tent.